Special thanks to 753 Academy for sponsoring this episode. No matter where you are in your fitness and health journey, they've got you covered. They specialize in helping you exceed your health and fitness goals, whether that is losing body fat, gaining muscle, or nutritional coaching to match your fitness levels. They do it all with a written guarantee for results, so you don't waste time and money on a program that doesn't exceed your goals. Their martial arts programs specialize in anti-bullying programs for kids to combat-proven Filipino martial arts. They take a holistic, fun, and innovative approach that simply works. Sign up for your free class now at 753academy.com. Find the link in the show notes.
Welcome to the Wounds of the Faithful podcast, brought to you by DSW Ministries. Your host is singer, songwriter, speaker, and domestic violence advocate Diana. She is passionate about helping survivors in the church heal from domestic violence and abuse and trauma. This podcast is not a substitute for professional counseling or qualified medical help. Now, here is Diana.
Hello, everyone. How are you guys today? This is one of our new episodes. We have Jake Doberenz back on the show. He was on season 2, and I did rebroadcast the first interview that I had with him. So please go back and listen to that. It is fantastic, and there's a lot of new things going on with Jake. He has a new podcast, which is called Christianity Without Compromise. He also has a new Substack that is fabulous. He's written a book, Super Jake, and a second book, Super Jake and Cool Kenny. So that's a fictional book. He got remarried recently, and there's a lot of here to talk about that is very timely for today. I just love his podcast. It is really great. He talks about current topics that affect the church. And so I'm not going to do too much intro because, like I said, you can listen to the original podcast interview from last time. I've got lots of questions for him. I don't really have a script today. I'm just going to go with the flow as to what he wants to talk about. A couple housekeeping things. I had some computer problems, some internet problems. And so I was this afternoon switching out my computer in my studio with my laptop. So I didn't have to do the podcast on my cell phone. This camera isn't as wonderful as my other one, and the sound isn't as wonderful, but I'm going to try and fix the sound part post-production. But this is going to be a fantastic show, perfect for the new year. So I hope that you will enjoy my second conversation with Jake Doberenz. All right, welcome back to the show from season 2, Jake Doberenz. Thanks for coming on the show again.
Of course. I'm glad you'll have me. All these seasons later, that's really fun. It's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened since you were on the show. So I was glad that you were looking to be a guest again, and definitely wanted you to come back and share what you've been up to since then, some exciting things, and then some contemplative things that you've experienced. So remind the folks what you're all about.
Oh, what I'm all about. I mean, the format's changed, but I've always just been trying to communicate Christian truth to people, through podcasts, through books, through plays, like whatever. The medium changes all the time. I just think Jesus is pretty cool, and I want people to know him better. And I want people to know the real Jesus and not there's a bunch of posers running around. Don't know if you knew that, but I want people to encounter the real thing. So, I mean, that's what I'm all about. Since the last time we've talked, I've probably started and also abandoned like 100 projects. That's just my nature, fortunately and unfortunately.
Well, I was a big fan of your Creatively Christian
Hmm.
podcast. I was a guest on there with Andrea,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed that, being a musician and everything, and a
Hmm.
creative myself. I understand that you're not doing that anymore, right?
Yeah, that one's not active anymore. And I handed that off to Brandon. Brandon was one of our anchor hosts there on the show. He still posts about the show sometimes, and he has all the rights and access to the material. And so episodes still get shared and still get listens to. I think we stopped early, like 23 or 24. Man, I don't know. The years have blurred together, but I still get notifications of people wanting to be guests on that show, or something like Good Pods will say, hey, this is ranked in the top for Christian arts and stuff. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. So it still gets traction even though we're not actively publishing, which is definitely fun.
Wow. And you have this new podcast, Christianity Without Compromise, which I am like fan number two. Jake, I just absolutely love this podcast. I know you had it branded as Smashing Idols, which I actually liked that title.
I
Or
know,
did you
yeah.
decide to change it?
Well, I decided to change it because it's a cool title, but I would tell that to people and they'd be like, what is that? Huh? What's going on here? And so I wanted to fit a couple keywords in there. I wanted to be very clear. It was about Christianity and Christian stuff. So a little bit to get found better. I mean, that was a lot of
Mm.
it, to get understood a little bit better. But we're still this pretty much the same mission. We're smashing the idols. We're trying to bring the church back to kind of a faithful Christian witness, right? And that means, hey, there are some idols in the way. We're just going to move them and sometimes get a hammer out and start smashing them because we got to get those out of the way to get back to the real deal.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
When you're on here in season two, you went through some really difficult times of your life. And I wanted to have you share with our audience what you've learned in those tough times, and what was your relationship with the Lord and how he helped you through that. So whatever you're comfortable sharing with us.
Yeah. I mean, since then, I've had my Job more than a year, my Job period of life, right? But before we catch everybody up, I want people to understand, like, I had a relatively more or less comfortable life. I grew up in the church. My parents stayed together. It wasn't perfect, but they stayed together, and didn't really have anybody like die or leave in my world. Like, it wasn't bad. And then I grow up and become an adult human person. I graduate college, and then it was a little bit downhill from there. I think we're on the upward hill part, but it went downhill from there. So after college, I got married to somebody who I loved and thought loved me, and things were pretty good. Um, until a time where she just decided, I don't want to invest in this relationship anymore. I don't want to do this thing anymore. And there were a variety of reasons for that I won't get into. That's something that she decided, but we did the whole marriage counseling thing. And ultimately, it comes to a point in counseling like that where there's a decision. We spend 6 weeks or whatever picking apart all the problems. Now, are you going to change? Are we going to do something about it? Are we going to fix it? And her answer was, I'm good. I don't think so. See you later.
Mm.
And so that was a difficult year. It ended up being about a year from there. So the actual divorce papers were signed. And that was not a fun time in my life, for sure. Obviously, for people that have gone through any kind of broken relationships like that, just not good. I struggled a lot. You mentioned the faith journey kind of thing. Like, I believed God wanted to save my marriage. I did pretty much everything I could as a human being to save that. I did. I read all the books. I literally read maybe 30 marriage books. I did counseling, individual therapy. I talked to experts in saving marriages and marriages in crisis. I spent a good chunk of money as kind of this last ditch effort going to this conference that we both attended virtually that was supposed to kind of help get us talking and heal some things. None of that worked. And that was really challenging because I said, well, doesn't God want marriages to stay together? Isn't that what God's all about? Like that would be God's preference, surely, right? God doesn't override free will very often. And so that's what happened. Like people made choices, and it was a eye-opening time of like other people in the world can just make whatever choices they want, and sometimes you cannot control them, right? You can't, you don't have a say, and we have to just deal with that. We have to accept that to some extent. I am proud of the progress that I made and the things I did to better myself, and so I can sleep easy, so to speak, knowing that like I did my part. But there was no happy ending to that necessarily. And then pretty much shortly after that, my dad died unexpectedly. And so again, it was this Job thing, right? It's just like one after another, and things kind of fell apart. And losing a marriage, losing a father, they, for better or for worse, put things in perspective. And so while those weren't good things, like I can't call them objectively good, there was good that came out of that. I became a better person. I'm just full stop. I like to think I'm a better person than I was last time I was on the show here.
Absolutely.
I am healthier spiritually, mentally, in all the ways. Like I did the work in myself. It doesn't mean I'm a perfect human being. Still a process, but I'm at a better point. And I'm remarried now. I found somebody who really likes me, and she's not going anywhere. And we put in the work together, and doesn't mean things are perfect, but we both recognize that we are imperfect, and we're just going to do our best each day. And if there's a problem, we're going to address it and not hide it for 3 years kind of thing. And it's good. So that's been the journey, right? Like, literally the darkest times. I mean, there was a brief moment in that darkness that the holiday after my dad died, and I had gotten divorced, and my dad died in the same year, I felt for the first time like thoughts of ending it all. And those were fleeting. I didn't think that very often, but it was just like too much. But I crawled my way out of that darkness, and things are better on the other side. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, well, thank you for being so transparent. And it's not easy to say those hard times. And I think that a lot of people listening can relate to what you just said and have been through divorce. And no matter who's ended the relationship, it was ending for a reason. And they question will, and whether God's mad at them or the church is not supportive of them.
Yeah.
That was one of my questions. How did your church respond to the divorce? Did you felt like you were cared for, or did you feel judged in any way, or what was that like?
Well, I'm going to make a generalization here that I've noted before. My more conservative Christian church friends didn't ever want to talk about it. They weren't going to bring it up. They weren't going to say anything. I'm like, surely you've heard through the grapevine, you saw something, you realized who's missing in the picture, like, but they wouldn't bring it up. Uncomfortable, wouldn't talk about it. Now, my more, what I'll call progressive Christian friends, they were talking about, oh, come on, Jake is fine. Like, second marriages are better. Who cares about her? Move on, man. Life can be so much great on the other side. Which, I mean, I get what they were trying to do, but that's not what I want to hear either. And then weirdly, some of my atheist friends, like coworkers and things of that nature, they were just like, man, that sucks. Like, that's tough. That's terrible. And so I got a lot of my actual support from the atheists. And again, generalizations
Wow.
here. Like, there were Christians that were good. Like, yeah. But a lot of people in the church just didn't want to have that conversation. Or if they were going to have that conversation, they wanted to go too much into the rainbows and sunshine on the other side. But that's not what I wanted to hear.
Mhm.
A lot of people thought I was crazy for trying to save my marriage, for hoping, for wanting. Everybody can make their own different choices there in relationships that are in crisis in that point. For me, I stuck it out basically until my dad died, where that was like, in a weird way, kind of just a way for me to move on and say, I'm going to focus, like, when your life can literally just be cut short. I need to move on. I'm going to go a new direction kind of thing. But yeah, people were strange. People acted strangely. So I don't think I was judged or condemned, not to my face,
Hmm.
nothing that I ever heard. The only thing that was judged, weirdly, was me sticking it out, trying
Hmm.
to save that marriage. Some
Boy.
people did not like that, including some close friends got mad at me because they're like, well, how dare you? She doesn't want it. How dare you try to pursue, try to make this better? And that's a tough one. I mean, I think it's a little harsh and crazy to be mad at me for wanting to fix it.
Yeah.
Again, it comes down to, yeah, you need two people. So if the two people aren't on board here, well, that can't be saved. And that's how it ended up happening.
Well, I went through my own divorce, as you know, and I'm
Uh-huh.
on my second marriage, and they church crucified me. I
Wow.
mean, it was very negative and very judgmental, and I did try to save the marriage. I dragged him
Mm-hmm.
to three different marriage counselors, and
Yeah.
of course, suffered a lot of abuse for 13 years. And he didn't want to save the marriage when we were together. And I'm not going to force somebody to change or to
You
repent. It's like,
can't.
well,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry that the church didn't support me. And the church decided they were going to make me either go back to my husband or I couldn't be part of the church anymore. It's like, no,
Yeah, that's
I'm
insane.
not going back. I'm not going
Yeah.
back to an unrepentant husband.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that you had a good experience, although a little strange, but you didn't seem to be ostracized or gossiped
Not to my
about.
face. I mean,
Yeah, not to your face, they can, I guess, say what they want, but
well, I was doing some preaching at some churches and like doing stuff like that. And I was afraid that I was going to lose those positions. I didn't. And maybe this is a gender thing that comes into play here, but it was like, well,
mm,
she decided to leave, so you're fine, you're off the hook, or something like that. Some people wanted to know whose fault was it. And I'm like, well, I wasn't perfect here. There was reasons she wanted out, but at the end of the day, she was the one wanting out. So, and this doesn't make it better or more comfortable, but I feel like there were some people in the church that were like, well, as long as it's her fault, as long as it's something. But I don't know. I still struggled with all the biblical stuff myself. I gave myself
oh
enough
yeah,
guilt.
they were quoting
Ugh,
Bible verses at me right and left.
ugh.
And,
Yeah,
I
that's
couldn't,
tough.
quote
Oh my
unquote, couldn't
goodness.
get married again, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
All the verses, and a lot of my listeners have gone through the same kind of
Mm.
negative, judgmental stuff. But glad you came out on the other side with the, would you call it depression when your dad died, when you momentarily wanted
Yeah.
to end it all?
Yeah, I was briefly on antidepressants. I needed medical intervention to get out of that, as well as other coping skills and things of that nature. So, yeah,
And
it
there's
was
no shame in
valid.
that, which a lot of people in my Mending the Soul groups and those that are
Mm.
listening here, they were shamed for going and getting some mental health help. stating that you only need the Bible and you just need to pray more and you don't need any of that other stuff to get over depression. And that is really so wrong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
We do need medication sometimes, maybe not forever, but there is no sin in getting medical help.
Amen. Absolutely.
Well, we'll probably get onto a lighter topic here. You wrote, were they young adult books, the Super Jake
They're
series that
middle
you wrote?
grade. So you're 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. That's who it's for.
That's a fun age. I remember being in that group, and I did a lot of reading.
Oh,
I
me
wish they
too.
had Super Jake and Cool Kenny when I was that age. Now, just to be honest, I haven't read those books, but could you tell the
It's
folks about your book? You're a natural writer. Is that one of your strengths? Or did you develop that?
5th grade. I'm writing stories and things like that. I fell in love with the craft of storytelling, of writing. And so I'm better than I was at writing than I was in 5th grade. So I have improved for sure. Well, when it comes to things I got to do before I die, like was one of those projects because I had created this alter ego character, Super Jake, created him in 3rd grade originally and started telling stories in 5th grade. It was my first creative work, right? The reason, leads to Creatively Christian, all the other creative endeavors that I would go to. This was my first love of storytelling. All came from Super Jake, who was a alter ego version of myself, who was a superhero who could shoot ice cream out of his hands because of course that's the power when you're, a 10-year-old shoots ice cream out of his hands. And so over the years, I struggled with how to tell the story or if to tell the story. I had this weird period of life where I was like, everything I have to do is Christian. So I can't tell that story because it's not quote unquote Christian. There's no come to Jesus moment at the end, or he's not converting the atheist. And I said, well, you know what I'm actually doing with these stories? What actually happened was the bad guys are elements of culture, of toxic culture. In the first book, it's the bad guys, the fashion police, and he's trying to tell everybody to be cool, you got to dress this way. That's what you got to do. And then Super Jake combats that with ice cream, with quips and jokes and words, and so there is no come to Jesus moment, but I am still trying to train specifically young boys, but any young reader who might take a look, I'm trying to train them into a better way of viewing things. The second one deals with toxic masculinity. Like the bad guy is all about, men gotta lift weights and we gotta be all tough and disrespect women and stuff like that. And so I tackle those cultural items.
Oh, I wish I had Super Jake when I was in grade school because
Yeah.
I wasn't very popular because I didn't wear the designer clothes. I had no name brands and I got picked on and bullied, and I wish I had Super Jake to come to the rescue for me.
Exactly. I know. We all
And
do.
what could
We all
Cool
do.
Kenny do? That was his brother,
Yeah.
right?
The brother. Yeah. My brother, weirdly, coincidentally, happens to be named Kenny as well. Just real crazy coincidence. But he has what's called prehensile hair. So his hair can grow and grab stuff and move around and things like that. So just wild, crazy powers. And the book series makes fun of that. They're very self aware that these are kind of weird powers. Maybe not the best crime fighting powers that you could ever think of, but that's the humor of it. And then you got to be very creative. It's hard for me to be creative enough to be like, okay, shooting scoops of ice cream into his hands, how can that actually save the day? So it's a good challenge for me.
And you'll have to read the books to find out what
And you'll have to
happens.
read the books. Yep, I gotta
And
get to finishing that series. Been slacking, but there's a couple books out already.
yeah, and so you guys can definitely find those on Amazon.
Yeah, all the places, Amazon,
All the
Walmart.
listeners, you got good books for kids to read that are clean and have some messages and some fun
Yeah,
at the same time.
yeah.
We do have your Substack that you said is not new. I have very few people that I subscribe to on Substack because I love to read, but I have only,
That's right.
not
Same
enough
thing with
hours in the
me.
day to read everything. You should see my stack of books on my
Yeah.
nightstand. But you have a fantastic Substack that I subscribe to, and it goes great with your podcast and your writing.
In college, I minored in communication studies because I was very interested, not just in the knowledge, but how do we communicate this? How do I get this across effectively? So I try to use that in my writing and my podcasting. Whatever I'm doing, I want you to understand the message the best. So I'm very picky about what words I use and when I do line breaks in spaces. Anyway, that's just stuff I nerd out about.
I like to write, but I'm not that good at it. I have to really, really work at it.
I'm sure in your MDiv, you're going to be writing some stuff. So,
I've already been warned about that. You're going to be writing a lot
oh,
of.
you're going to write some stuff. Yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah, spell check. I'm a good speller and good at grammar and stuff. I have it in my head when I want to say, but it never comes out the way I
I
want it to come
gotcha.
out. Do
I
you have that
gotcha.
struggle? Probably
I
not.
do sometimes. That's why I just throw it out there and I rearrange later. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend if you're not on Substack, there's some really great writers on there and people like Jake that care about Jesus. So we did mention your podcast. I really want to talk about your amazing, amazing guests. You really knock it out of the park like every time. I think there's only one guest that I didn't agree with.
Okay.
I just turned it off because I did not agree with what they were saying. But you have some amazing topics, and I love that it's a podcast for Christians weary of shallow faith and culture war religion. Oh my goodness, that is so perfectly worded and bring us back to Jesus centered Christianity. I absolutely love that because it is about Jesus. It's not all this other junk around it
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that we call Christianity. It's churchianity.
Yeah.
And just going back to Jesus is what I tell the survivors listening, my people in my groups, when you're trying to reconstruct, right? Like, well, what do I do? What do I believe? Well, this is what I tell them is go back to Jesus. What was Jesus doing? And you talk about that quite a bit on your show. We're going to get rid of all the fluff and the legalism. You list the prosperity gospel, the purity culture, toxic church leadership, obsession with sin and hell, politics mixed in with the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to get away from those things and come back to Christ alone.
Yeah.
Besides our current culture right now, why did you decide to do this podcast? Because you're really right in the middle of the war zone when you come out and say these things.
Mm. Yeah, I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment or something, right? Like, just love for people to be mad at me online. It's my favorite thing. Um, I get some pushback. When I started investing more, putting more stuff on YouTube, obviously on YouTube you can get comments, and then I see some comments of people that are like, "Oh, this guest is a Marxist, blah blah blah, terrible sinner person." I'm like, "Did you listen? What are you talking about, man?"
Jake, a
And so
Marxist?
I'm like, whatever.
No.
So sometimes I'm like, reading comprehension, we need to work on that or listening comprehension, because what are you guys saying? I mean, it started as just a general kind of theology project. I wanted to podcast about fun topics that I cared about. And then the closest I have ever felt to hearing the audible voice of God was this concept of smashing idols, this idea of be a Gideon who smashes idols in the night and has his dad defend him. Whole fun little story. And that was like a calling of God. This is what you're supposed to be doing, Jake. And so I followed that. I listened to that. I started focusing a little bit more on cleaning up the church. Like you said, we're cluttered, so let's clean this extra stuff up. Let's get back to the essentials here, the basic stuff. And so, yeah, it puts me into a fun spot where I get to have all those conversations that you mentioned. Many of those conversations, which I don't agree with either. we have people on all different sides of the spectrum. Well, not all sides of the spectrum. There are some sides. We're not going to touch those sides, but we have a lot of different perspectives and things of that nature. And so I try to select guests that are going to be more charitable and more giving us something to think about and trying to strip away stuff to point us to Jesus. So,
Listen to some of these titles. Religious certainty and being the only one saved. Ooh, that was Scott Lloyd. Crotch
yeah.
Christianity misses the gospel. And yes, I did laugh at that. I thought that was a
Yeah,
funny
people
episode.
hate when I say the word crotch, but it's fine.
Yes, I got a good giggle at 6 a.m. when I'm on my way to work. No king but Christ, rethinking state. Craig Hargis. Why
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a creationist anymore. That was very interesting, Jake. I listened to that very intently. The Bible is
Yeah.
not an informational book, which I've learned that the hard way in my
Right.
reconstruction. Can
Yeah.
the Bible be an idol? Ooh, look at you, Jake. You're really stirring the pot now.
Oh
The
yeah.
dangers of Christian nationalism and tribalism. You had Scott McKnight on deconstruction. That was
Mm-hmm.
probably the first podcast I listened to, and it was absolutely fantastic. Scott is amazing,
Oh,
and I
brilliant guy
agreed
for
with
sure.
everything that he said. I'm going to get some of his books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, comment on some of these topics here about the Bible's not an informational book. You've got an MDiv, right? From
MTS, Master of Theological
MTS,
Studies. Yeah.
okay. And what I really like about you, Jake, is that you are very transparent with, okay, I've made a lot of mistakes as a Christian in that I thought I knew everything. I thought that I had all my beliefs set in this little box, and if anybody challenges my box, then they were a heretic, and I'm super Christian. Let me tell you, I was that person too. I
Mm-hmm.
was like that when I was in my old life, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought, wow, this guy gets it. And you're like, oh, until I went to seminary, and then some of the professors took me down a peg or two
Oh yeah.
and showed you some things. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it. Like, for me, went to college thinking I already knew the answers, but I was like, yeah, but I still have to have the degrees just to get the next job. Blah blah blah. And really just was opened up to a world that I didn't really know that well, apparently. And just encountering diversity of thought was really important. And at its best, that's what higher education of any kind, is supposed to do. Tell you there are some other way. Yeah, okay, 2 + 2 = 4, but in a lot of things in the world, there's like some different perspectives, different angles here, and things of that nature. And so, kind of kicking and screaming, like, God brought me through education and said, Jake, yo, you don't know everything. You actually know very little things. And I was humbled through that process. Now, education absolutely can lead many people to be more prideful, to be more puffed up, to be like, oh, I know everything now because I have a degree. I was a lucky case where it did the opposite. I still like to think I know a couple things. The Bible study at church, I'm like, yeah, but have you guys considered the Greek word means? But
Yep.
occasionally there's still that. But I was privileged that I had professors that they were Christians, they were teaching Bible and theology, and they were gracious to young 20 something Jake and were willing to walk through with him and to take his questions. And I was introduced ultimately while I was studying the Bible, interestingly, like as an information book. Like, I have my degree in the academic study of the Bible. The professors made sure I was still having an encounter with Jesus, and that was the key there. It's as much as I love digging into the deep stuff about scripture, and there's so much depth, there's so many different little things you could go into. I like the weird parts. Give me the Leviticus or whatever. Let's get weird here. But I didn't lose sight of the real star of the story, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately it is Jesus that is the truest revelation of God and not the Bible. The Bible witnesses to Jesus, but the Bible is not the main star. It is Jesus. And I was able to realize that, and that opened up everything. That made me a more charitable person. It made me nicer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't think I knew all the answers. So suddenly, fruits of the Spirit, I had the Spirit because the fruits were coming out in a way they were not before, because I had a spirit of hatred and division and rightness, not a super helpful one. So I was privileged. I was lucky. It still took me a couple of years, and I am always aware of that. I don't think anybody should change their mind overnight, like the creationist one, for instance.
Yeah.
I don't expect anybody to listen to that one episode and have their whole world change. Maybe, but I just want to start a conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
change takes time. I took years, and my homework was literally reading the Bible. Like when you're a Bible major, that's your homework. So
Mm-hmm.
for other people, if it takes some years, that's okay. I get it. Let's wrestle through this stuff. But as we wrestle, just like when Jacob wrestled with God, you're gonna probably get a limp. There's something that's gonna happen here. You're gonna be changed. You're gonna get a new name. You're gonna, in his case, at least in Jacob's case. So I say let's wrestle, but be prepared to be changed here. You're not gonna be the same.
Yes, I definitely, when I came out of my first marriage and had to change denominations, yeah, I was the same mindset because I did my undergraduate and I was a missionary for 15 years. And, I did know a lot about the Bible, but as you say, there's a lot that I didn't know. And I had to go to another church, and then I find out that, okay, this is a church that my previous denomination said was liberal, or
Sure.
they were not real Christians. They're backslidden or whatever because they used a guitar in the worship service, or they have differing beliefs in what Bible they use, and
Mm-hmm.
or the girls wear pants. Oh goodness. But the first time I go into these other churches looking for a new place to serve and heal, God just hit me upside the head with a 2x4 and just like, look, this person here loves Jesus and serves me. So I had gone through a lot of, oh, there's other legitimate beliefs. I'm married to somebody that does not believe in the rapture. So that was very different for me. I always thought all Christians believed in the rapture.
Mm.
The creationist part, I can't really ignore science. But I think what's important is that we believe, yes, God created the earth.
Yes,
God created
absolutely.
man. Whether it was a million years or if it was 10,000 years, the important part is that I believe that God is the center of that. It's all the details in between. I'm kind of undecided. I'm still,
Working through all of that.
we're still figuring it out. So I was glad that you brought those topics up in your podcast. You got to be open to, okay, God, you're going to show me what the truth is and what is non-negotiable and what is, okay, we can differ on some things, right? And I'm starting in a week going back to seminary for my MDiv.
Mm.
I didn't get to learn Greek or Hebrew the first go around, so I'm excited about
Ooh,
that part.
good
And
luck.
yeah, I like languages. I've already been through the humility part and God put me down a peg or two. So I think I'm on the right path to receive some things from the
Mm.
professors. God bless your professors who are so patient with you.
Oh, the best. Yeah, that's all I can ask for.
And like I said, we don't really talk about politics on the show, but the dangers of Christian nationalism and tribalism. It's like we're all in these different camps and they're all our
Mhm.
enemies because we're in our tribe and we don't go outside our tribe and
Yeah.
don't talk to anybody else. Unpack that a little for us because you explained that so well.
Oh man, yeah. There's a movement. I mean, we're talking in America specifically, but not only in America, not only in America by any stretch of the imaginations, of Christians who are feeling the loss of power and privilege, right? Because undeniably, Christians don't have the same place in many governments that they used to. That's an undeniable fact. Totally agree. It's not the same. I'm in the Bible Belt. There's still a church in every corner, but still, it's not the same thing it was 50 years ago. I wasn't alive 50 years ago, but from what I understand, 100 years ago, nobody was alive that long ago, probably, that listened to the show. Could be wrong. Yeah, things are different, sure, right? And so there is a movement of people that say we need to get back to what was a place when Christianity was more normalized, had that power and privilege, when it made sense to pray at a football game or something, when that was just a kind of a part of the culture. And some of that is not necessarily bad. I'm always careful when I talk about Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism isn't Christians spreading their faith or Christians having political opinions. But there comes a point when you have this nationalism, this tribalism, when it's just kind of this ugly mix of Christian values with American values, sometimes with some kind of white supremacy kinds of things mixed in. And the kind of cake that comes out of this recipe is just not what Jesus wants from us. It's not close to the gospel, which talks about peacemaking and is very pro humility and not taking power. And the Jesus we encounter in scripture is very much about the least of these, not so much about let me protect my rights or my privileges and things like that. And that's something Christians need to wrestle with. What are we engaging for? Are we engaging for what's best for me or what's best for the person on the street or the person who just doesn't have anything or doesn't have the same opportunities as us? Who are we fighting for when it comes to things in the political realm? And so then, yeah, that's kind of Christian nationalism in a nutshell. It's this project to take over and to make things much more friendly to Christianity. And to be clear, like, I do actually think the world would be better if everybody was Christian. But I don't want everybody to be Christian by the point of a sword or because it's politically advantageous or better for business. That's not why I want somebody to encounter Jesus, because that's not how we encounter Jesus. And this isn't new. I mean, the church, capital C church, has had some real trouble over history. If you ever looked into history, not some good moments. There were some really bad moments in church history. Yeah. And those bad moments happened because a church got in bed with empire. And they said, well, the king will serve God, when a lot of times it was God, quote unquote, serving the king, serving the emperor, and getting whatever agenda he wanted. I don't like these people. Well, God told me to do this or whatever. And it got ugly and bad. A lot of people died, which should have been red flag number one. When a lot of people die, probably not at all the way of Jesus. So we talk about that a lot on the show in different fashions. We talk about politics a lot. Unfortunately, I don't love all the politics talk, but it's something we have to have. It's something that's important because it affects real people. And yes, my brothers and sisters in Christ are going after some of these movements that are making more people, I think, fall away from Jesus, because they say, hold on, I read in the Bible, this Jesus guy, love him, but those Christians are not talking like Jesus. They're not acting like Jesus. They want to create laws that aren't like Jesus. What's going on here? And so, I had a stint in college ministry. I've talked to a lot of young people, and you know why the young people are leaving? It's the Christians. I hear the same story every time. It's not, well, Richard Dawkins had this great argument for evolution. That's not why they're leaving. I've heard, like, it's the Christians supporting this genocide in this country, or the Christians taking away the rights of this particular group, or the racist or sexist language over here. That's why. And that's really sad. And I want people to encounter that Christianity without compromise, right? Right. Jesus-centered. And I think if we discover that, I think people will like that. And I think Jesus is pretty cool. We all got to recognize that. There's a lot of cool things about faith, but we have just cluttered it with idols and with stuff that maybe is true, but is not the most important thing to press somebody on. And that makes me a little disappointed, to use that term. Sometimes it makes me quite angry. So, yeah.
Do you know who David Barton is?
David Barton, that name is not ringing a bell.
Well, he is like a pseudo historian. He made all of these videos about how the nation was founded, and it was
Okay.
pretty much a whitewashing of colonial history and how wonderful the pilgrims were, and had dinner with the Native Americans,
Oh,
and
right.
it was founded on Christian principles, and this is a Christian nation. Maybe some of that is true, but a lot of his books and reels that he made were not substantiated by actual historians. So he
Sure.
goes to all these churches and talks about our founders' history. They were all Bible believing Christians, and we have to get back to our Bible roots. I've been reading a lot of history because my mother's Cherokee,
Hmm.
and I'm reading about my heritage. And no, we were not founded on Christianity or biblical principles. There were a lot of genocide. The Native Americans were almost exterminated. Of course, we know about the slave trade. The slaves, they went through horrible, horrible things. We had imperialism, stealing people's land, taking whatever they want, and murdering whoever gets in their way. So Christian nationalism is very dangerous because it takes away the truth and marginalize people that seriously hurt. Maybe that was their intent, to build it on Christian principles, but that's not what happened. And we don't want to whitewash history. We don't want to pretend that that stuff didn't happen, that we have to take ownership of that as a country. And I don't see that happening right now. It's like,
No,
okay, you're
no,
going to
we don't
try
like
and
to take ownership.
change history. You can't change it and pretend it wasn't there or learn from it, you know?
Well, I definitely know work like his for sure. Yeah, and one of the things I don't just want to put people down, poke holes into things. When it comes to something like this, whether you believed any of that or not, we always can discover the truth, and we can change and we can make things better. Wherever the nation has been or is going, maybe not the best direction that we're going in, but I believe we can always turn as a people, as individuals. We can always change and go back to Jesus. I never want to leave it on the downer, is what I'm trying to say.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um, so I just wanted to throw that in there. Uh, we can change. We can get back on track. I believe it.
Yeah. There's definitely things we can learn from our past and try and make
Mm-hmm.
the world a better place. Whatever part of the world we're in, where we can influence our corner
Amen.
for
Absolutely.
Jesus. So we've talked about a lot of stuff. We're all over the map today, but
Yeah.
I loved what you said, what you shared with us, and just going back and forth on things. And I know you have your one question you always ask at the end of your show. I'm not going to
Oh
steal your
no.
idea, but do you have any advice for my audience that's listening? Some
The
closing
tips.
thoughts that you can give them.
Yeah. That's very funny. I briefly thought about it. I wonder if she's going to throw this back at me. A lot of my guests at the end of the show have a version of this. But even if it wasn't popular, I would say something similar. I think we just need to listen more. We need to learn to listen. I think that's going to help us spiritually. I think it's going to help us, as human beings in the world. I want to challenge people to practice that discipline of listening. I'm a talker, right? I have a podcast. I do have other people talk a lot on my podcast, though. So that's a great time for me to practice listening when I want to jump in it. Nope, nope. I just think, yeah, we can all practice listening a little bit more. Strike up a conversation with somebody different than you and just listen and not try to refute them, right? That should be the old you. That was certainly the old me who was like thinking of the argument in my head, how I'm going to refute them and not caring about them as a human being, not actually listening to the words they say.
Bingo.
So honestly, the most practical thing I can do is listen more. It's just going to help us be better human beings. And I think as we learn to listen to people more, I think we're also going to hear God much more clearly, right? We are going to be, if we're not transformed by the patterns of this world, as Romans 12 tells us, the rest of that verse is so that you will know the will of God. Do not be transformed by the patterns of this world, but by the renewing of your mind. I'm butchering it now, but all the parts are there. The point there is we will know the will of God when we're not engaging in the patterns of the world. And one of these patterns of the world is talking more and not listening. So listen up, everybody.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming back onto the show. You
Yeah.
are invited anytime to come back and
Wow.
talk about whatever you want.
I'll
'Cause,
come back in season, I don't know, 10, 12, whatever you're going to make
yeah,
it.
yeah, whatever I make it to.
There we go.
Well, God bless you and Happy
Yeah, thank
New
you, Diana.
Year.
Yeah, thank you.
I sure hope that you enjoyed Jake Doberenz. He is a wonderful speaker, wonderful human being. We talked about doing what we call a podcast swap. So I will be on Jake's show sometime in the future, within the next month or two, and I'll be telling my story and maybe talking about some of the idols that I had to deal with and the idols that I need to smash. But you can reach out to Jake on his website that has all things Jake. That will be jakedoberenz.com. This will all be in the show notes, but you can see all of the different ministries that he has, things that we talked about. So you can learn about his podcast, his Substack writing, his books, the Super Jake series, and he does preaching and teaching in other churches or conferences. Listen to his podcast on all of the major platforms that you're familiar with. His email is contact@jakedoberenz.com. Reach out to him if he can be of any help to you. Thanks for being here with us. We will see you next time. God bless and bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Wounds of the Faithful podcast. If this episode has been helpful to you, please hit the subscribe button and tell a friend. You can connect with us at dswministries.org, where you'll find our blog along with our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel links. Hope to see you next week.